welcome here to this roundtable discussion. The aim of these 1.5 hours that we have ahead of us is to evaluate the tools and the resources developed in this project. And we will discuss what are the measures needed to implement fashion tech education in Europe. And we will discuss how partnership between universities facilitate and improve the implementation of fashion tech education. And I also would like to add, happy to be here today and help finish this project, since I was leading the project at the beginning, but had to leave for some sad reasons. Anyway, I'm happy to be here, and I'm really this presentation here, and I leave the word to Anne to start with, and then I will take over the discussion.
Perfect. Thank you, Jonas. I will just also give a quick introduction to the participants that we have here with us today. I have been involved with the project almost from the beginning and have been involved in the different development processes of the resources themselves, but also in organizing and participating in the workshops that we've had. And with us today, we have Delia Dumitrescu from the University of Borås Swedish School of Textiles that participated in our Smart Textiles focused workshop. We have Douglas and Michelle from LCF, University of the Arts London, that have been involved in the development of the resources, but also participated in the workshops themselves. From Politecnico di Milano, we have Daria and Chiara with us, also involved in a variety of workshops. And Beatrice and Carla from Politecnico di Milano and the University of the Arts London that have participated in our workshops as master students, and hopefully have a good perspective for us about their experience in the workshop and how this fashion tech education for fashion tech approach has had an impact on their education and also perhaps future career choices. So to start off, I would like to make a brief introduction to the resources that we have developed in the project. All of them are available, of course, on the E4FT.eu website, but I will give a quick overview, as I think this will be a good starting point for the discussion as well. So first of all, one of the last intellectual outputs actually that we have developed are the learning units, which propose the key areas of fashion tech that, in our opinion, are the most for a fashion tech master's curriculum. And I'm also happy to see from the previous roundtable in the discussion of what characteristics are relevant for a fashion tech professional and what kind of industries are collaborating in the field, that the resources that we have developed actually meet what was discussed in the first roundtable. So to start off, we started the learning units based on the benchmarking report, in which we interviewed a variety of universities, companies, and research institutions that are active in the field of fashion tech, just to get an understanding what are the relevant areas and the different topics that a fashion tech professional should be aware of, as the field itself or the professional should be a hybrid person working in the interdisciplinary field of fashion tech. So one of the main areas that we identified was the one of design and ideation. And here I will bring in the different competences that we found that were important for such professionals. So for example, starting from concept development, we have digital drawing and sketching, but also pattern making. Then the second one was human, social, psychological, and economic contexts, which is quite broad, but it aims to complement the two main areas of the design and technology, and provide the professional the understanding of how to identify opportunities in the area, how to do ethnographic research, also aspects such as sustainability and ethics, which come in, for example, through data collection with the fashion tech products, or the sustainability in which different materials are being involved in one product. But also we have here business models and strategies. So just to give an understanding how to start your own business and what does a future fashion tech business model look like. And the second main area here, we also have technology and engineering. So here, just going into the basics of, for example, circuit design and coding. So based on that, we developed 18 learning units within the 3 bigger areas, which can act as standalone courses or a part of a bigger curriculum. So in our case, a master's curriculum on fashion tech design at the intersection of smart textiles, wearables, and digital manufacturing. So the learning units are content specific, and within them we propose a structure and what strengths and competencies that a fashion tech professional should develop within each of those more specific topics. So starting with the one of design and ideation. We have learning units focusing on the design process itself, so really going back into the basics. But also computational couture, digital manufacturing, made by hand, made by machine, e-textiles, so the tools for designing, and also interaction design. Secondly, in technology and engineering, we have ones focusing on textile electronics, also Internet of Things, which is more of a theoretical background of the topic, and then more hands-on learning units focusing on 3D prototyping and modeling. What are the materials relevant within smart textiles, but also coding and a more specific workshop on wearables. And in the last complementary learning or educational unit, we have that of identifying opportunities. Knowledge exchange, how to work between the different industries or disciplines that are relevant for the fashion tech area. As I mentioned before, also sustainability and ethics. We have qualitative research methods, also sustainable business models, and what are the necessary skills or tools for the designers to start up their own companies. Each of the learning units, we have a web version, so this you can find on our website. So this is an example of the design process where we make a short introduction at the indicated content, but also link the learning unit to the user guide, unit mapping, and a unit progression example. So to give an example of how to structure a master's curriculum for fashion tech design and kind of what are the preliminary requisites for developing the competences in the design process unit, going on how this links to, for example, computational couture or the coding course, for an example. For each of the units, we also have a print version. This is again an example of the one from the design process. So all of them are free to use for teachers in teaching fashion tech. We have mostly aimed this for the European higher education area, but of course it's free to use for anyone that is interested. The second resource that we have developed is the one of the teacher's toolkit, through which we also tested it through a train the trainers workshop. And in here, the aim was to first understand and develop the tools that are necessary for teachers interested or for those who have already been teaching in the field for a longer time, to really understand what are the appropriate methods or approaches to teaching fashion tech. So here, some of the tools that we have are content specific, but mostly just to give an idea of what is what, and kind of supporting the modular approach of the full curriculum as well, of having the different tools just to mix and match however is necessary, and also link them to the learning units that we have developed. So we based this design actually on the TED 10, which we thought was a really clever approach to designing a toolkit. So we have 9 different methods and approaches that are complemented by resources. So what we have focused here on is giving a basis for the lectures in fashion tech, kind of giving an introduction to what fashion tech is. We have 4 different workshops. that focus on the three main areas that I described before. We also have approaches on how to carry out interdisciplinary group work. So how to give the students the knowledge and understanding of what is important to work between the different disciplines. So them as, for example, a fashion tech designer has mostly a bachelor's background in fashion design, but also gets an understanding of coding or how to build circuits. So they don't have to have the knowledge themselves of how to actually do it, but the knowledge of the background, what goes into it, and the right language that they have. Then we also have work-based learning, connecting that to the industry and giving them the experience of actually working in the industry. Problem-based learning, one of the main approaches that we have taken within the curriculum as well. Field trips, so further making connections within the industry. Learning through research, so also focusing on the scientific side of the field, not just on the industry itself, but also producing professionals that can, for example, continue their career in academia. Then we have blended learning, emphasizing the mixing of the traditional and online methods to teaching and learning. We have self-directed learning, in which we expect the student to be able to work independently, besides being able to work in groups. And a variety of resources that we have identified that are interesting and that have been complemented and updated as we have moved on in the project. Here is one example of the learning through research. Again, we have an online version, which includes most of the enabler, so a short description of the tool, but also a facilitator guide of more practical notes and examples of how to carry out this type of approach. Of course, we have print versions here. This is an example of the design workshop that we have developed. So we have printout sheets for the students to use. All of the resources that we have developed, we have piloted through the Fashion Tech workshops. So this is also the aim of the roundtable, to understand the relevance and the usefulness of the resources through the workshops that we have carried out. So the first hackathon was the first really try in which we focused on the blended learning and problem-based learning approach, for example, in which we had a distance learning section and also on-site learning section that we held at the Digital Learning Lab at the London College of Fashion. There we also tested the different competences of the students before and after the hackathon. The teacher's toolkit we tested in the Train the Trainers workshop that took place here in Borås. And lastly, we had 3 intensive programs on the 3 bigger areas of the fashion tech approach, so digital manufacturing, wearables, and smart textiles. Within all the workshops that we did, we took a collaborative, multidisciplinary, and also, of course, a transnational approach, in which we connected teachers and students from all the 3 universities. And the feedback that we received was good and really eye-opening for the participants as well. So now Jonas will take over and lead the discussion with the participants from these workshops.
Yes. So, yeah, let's move on to this discussion. Hey Delia, hey Daria, Beatrice,
Hi.
Carla.
Hello.
Fiona,
Hi.
Douglas.
Hello.
Us, I forgot. Michelle, of course. Very nice to meet you. It's always interesting to have this type of moderated discussions online. I think it's gonna go well. Let's see here. We have prepared a few questions, and let's see here if I can share. Yes. So the first, do you see my screen now?
Yes.
Yes, perfect.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah. So part one here. This is going to be a two-part discussion. So we're going to do part one now, and then Ann will introduce part two further on, and we will continue with the discussion after Ann's second introduction. But the first question that we have here is, what is the relevance of the resources and topics in the fashion tech MA education, and how can they complement each other? Does somebody want to start?
I can start if you like.
Yes.
So we're talking about the units, yes, the units that the Fashion Tech curriculum offers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So basically, these are aimed at offering quite a bespoke learning experience. So for educators to be able to pick and choose from the resource, to combine it in a way that is complementary, dependent on the needs of their students. So, you know, we've seen examples in the previous roundtable where two startups were looking very much at the business side of fashion tech, and therefore, you know, they may choose to go into the set of units that connect to the human, social, psychological, and economic contexts. But equally, they may be involving some level of make, in which case they may want to go to some of the units offered by Boras on text, technology and engineering to learn a little bit about the very sort of practical side of make, or, you know, equally the conceptual side. So it's very much about a bespoke experience.
Yes.
In terms of how it complements.
Is there any perspective or any components here that any of you to complete the whole package, or is it complete?
Should I say something else? Having worked very closely. Yeah, I personally think we need to expand the business side that we offer. We perhaps need to look more at online platforms and ways of enabling, talking about the support and the mentoring that was discussed in the previous roundtable. It makes me think that we need to offer some ways of providing that through the units that we offer, particularly in terms of online platforms and entrepreneurship. And research and development. We've got the ethnographic research tools there, but perhaps we need to look a little bit more at the research and development options that we offer in the tools.
I think perhaps I might then add to that, but from my perspective, the parts I find interesting are the overlaps between some of the tools. I think that's where it's actually really successful, in that we're offering people the chance to maybe ethnographically explore the use of a technology, to think about how that might inform a business, and to really think about, you know, the way ideation and particularly social contexts and business contexts fit together. So I actually think that although the tools we have are very specific, where they overlap and where they merge are the really interesting bits for learning.
Yes, yeah. I have I'm sorry, you have to excuse me going back and forth between you here in my presentation. I don't really know how to manage this software otherwise. But I had here this this slide here on the different components that we have developed here in this project. And as you say, Douglas, I do think that these overlap well with each other and also support each other. Yeah.
Can I add something?
Sure.
So what I've seen through the workshops is that when you interact with technologies, so when you are applying a learning by doing approach,
yeah,
also the design process change. So for my personal experience and by looking at the students that were interacting with technologies, the process changed according to also the project that they thought out and then the effective one. So an experience that was really interesting was that many of them discovered by interacting with the technology that through the experimentation, the output that was not the one that they desired was more interesting than the one that they projected at start. So also I think that fashion tech design process could be iteratively observed in a real case scenario and understand how this change respect to the traditional design process. So also an experimental component of this design process should be iteratively investigated and through workshops, hackathons. And I think that the perspective of the students here is really important because you can clearly understand if this emerged also in their experience or if it's something that you can see from the outside.
Yes, this iterative process that you have observed here, I think I have seen the usefulness of having iterative processes in other projects as well, since we move much faster to a solution in an iterative process. Could you develop that a little bit more? What you how you experience that iterative process?
So I can talk about, for example, a workshop I was part of in my previous experience, and it was with laser cutting machines. And there were the students who had in mind this pattern to be engraved into the fabric, and they had the clear idea of how to proceed with the technology. But then when they went to making this effective, so when the machine started working on it, they understood that it took 10 hours to produce that specific thing. And then thinking on how to find a solution to have a similar outcome, but in less time, they entered really in the technology parameters and values, and they understood that, for example, lowering down the power of the cutting, so the laser cutting, they could have a more interesting approach, because in that case the neoprene started fusing and also the pattern was really organic. So they discovered a new feature of the interaction between material and the machine by working on the limits of the design that they were thinking at first. So the iterative process of really interacting with the machine, with the technologies, opens up some of the most interesting cases that maybe in a traditional path you cannot see because you delegate that stage to someone who is able to use the machine and go through a traditional path.
Yeah. So this was my next question. So how is this approach, this iterative approach, different, you think, from other types of academic learning?
From the one you developed?
The one you experienced, the one you describe here, how do you feel that is different from more conventional academic learning?
I think with the direct interaction with the tool.
Yeah.
So getting your hands dirty, I don't know.
Yes.
Jonas, sorry to interrupt. There are some hands up in the chat as well, and there are also questions in the chat.
Sure. Let's see here. Oh, 3. Okay. Okay. So we have Anthony Kent here. He has one question.
Great to see this curriculum and all the elements that are in it. You've got a lot going on there with lectures, workshops, work-based learning, problem-based learning, lots going on. How do you fit it all into the curriculum? What happens and when?
Yes, that's a very good question. Alan, would you like to start, or
yes,
maybe Sarah?
I can take that question.
Yeah.
So the way that we have developed this is that they are proposals of the topics that we think that are relevant. And later on, I will also introduce a different learning, a different output that we have developed is the tuning document that actually proposes the structure for the master's curriculum that we think should be developed for fashion tech design. So the way that the learning units and the teacher's toolkit both fit in is that we take a modular approach. And these are our proposals of what we think is most relevant to the fashion tech approach based on the experience that we've had with the workshops, but also the desk research that we have done in the benchmarking report. So proposals for teachers to kind of mix and match however they feel that it fits in within their own standalone courses or curriculums that they're developing. So the courses can fit in, for example, in a fashion design curriculum, also textile engineering. There's so many different approaches and disciplines that you can involve them in besides only developing a very fashion tech focused curriculum that would develop these hybrid professionals that we would like to see in the industry.
Okay, so you can just pick out whatever you want and...
Absolutely.
But had you actually considered all these elements as a course in itself?
Do you mean in a curriculum? Because I think we have so many different so what is a course and a unit that we have seen also within the project between Sweden and UK, for example.
Well, probably that's too difficult to answer in this short space of time, but okay, yes.
Well, we have made an example also of how the units that we have proposed can progress within a 2 years master curriculum. So that is available on the website as well. So what we see are the more beginning courses for beginners learning just fashion design, such as the design process itself. But also more experienced learners can take the wearables workshop, for example.
Okay, thanks for that. There are other people. I did have another question or comment, but there are other people who want to ask things as well, so I'll come back in a minute.
Yeah,
right, maybe we should move on to this guest who has a number 10266 800.
Yeah, I think that's.
So I think that's actually quite a successful project. It's usually offered as a single term project across all of our master's degrees courses. And so usually what will happen is students will be encouraged to meet a brief that's set by either an industry partner or a researcher, and they will work in teams that represent some of the different courses we have. So from the kind of very design-based courses to the business courses. So there is a diversity within those teams. And I think actually some of the outcomes we've seen from that when students have been working on tech projects in particular have been really strong and have had that kind of essentially that merger of different approaches that's led to some quite new thinking and also led to some really skilled presentation of the outcomes.
Yeah.
So that's why I think I'm quite kind of passionate about the idea of working in groups, because I've seen the success of that.
I think from the chat here, chat member Pasanes Mardones, you have to excuse my pronunciation, has shared a video on neurodivergent professionals. And would you perhaps like to elaborate a little bit on what that is?
Oh, yes, I had a question about something else as well, but can you hear me? Yes?
Yes.
Yes, no, this matches onto the discussion about diversity. It's not only about race diversity or skills diversity, but since we're also educating people, I think neurodiversity is very important. We are receiving more and more students that are neurodivergent in the sense that they learn different. Some are visual learners, others are verbal learners, but there's also a lot of neurodivergency. So this video, you can watch it later, points on how IBM capitalized over recruiting people who were outside of the box, a little bit different in the way they were thinking, and that actually became an asset for the company. And I think if we apply that also to fashion tech, that would be great. We need more programmers, we need more introverts, we need extroverts to sell things and think about things, but all these different types of the way that the mind works could also contribute to the fashion tech industry as well. And I had a question. May I ask a question regarding this topic? Is that you mentioned the tuning document. I was reviewing it. It's great information and lots of resources. I'm starting a project on how to prepare students in the bachelor level. I was wondering, is there a tuning document on that area, or maybe I'm reinventing the wheel if I'm starting a project on researching that?
Not that I am aware of. We focused on a master's level in order to provide that specialization of being a fashion tech designer.
Yeah. We can, maybe I can add a little bit to that answer too. I think that we have, when we have looked at the different learning outcomes that we have in the tuning document from the different countries, I think they're quite similar. And in Sweden, at least, the learning outcomes on graduate level and postgraduate level, they are quite similar. So I think that you can use them, but there are some difference in expectations on. So I think areas are essentially the same. They need to learn about the basic skill set. They have to have this knowledge, but then on master's level, they have to contribute with knowledge or contribute to society. But on bachelor level, they only have to know what are the components, for example.
Yes, because what I found is there's a tuning document on business, but I haven't found a tuning document on fashion per se. So I found yours, which is most useful. And I'm planning to do a research on how to prepare our bachelor students. I'm working in the Amsterdam Fashion Academy, so that they graduate a little bit closer to all that complex image that you show with all the competencies that they should have when they go to master.
Yes. Right.
So a colleague of yours, Jose, was pointing the doubling competencies. Is that a good start?
Yes, it is. I would. I'm right.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And then we have Chiara here again.
Yes, I would like to add something that maybe could be common to all the students that will go through an MA on fashion tech that I don't think we've talked about, is understanding the implication of designing for fashion tech. Because I'm doing a PhD on understanding the relations between humans and self-tracking wearable technologies. And you have, for wearable technology and smart textile, various implications on the self, on the sense of the self, sense of identity, the way people relate to the society. So I think that also the psychological, the economic part should have, the philosophical part maybe, and ethics should gain more importance in the curriculum, because it's something that can be a common point on everyone and should really be taken into attention, because we're designing things that will go in the world, and since technology will be integrated, we really need to think if it's worth to design that kind of philosophy and of technology, and really question about the user experience and how the habits of people will change interacting with that technology. So I think that the implication of the relation between humans and technology should be also integrated into the path as a common tunnel to which everyone should pass.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that. I think that's vital. But there's also a really interesting concept that comes from social science. It's called the socio-technical imaginary. And it's basically the ideas of technology that we have that are perpetuated throughout society anyway, that we bring to the design process. So we already have an imagination of what wearable technology will be. And I think part of developing these kind of cultures around designing for fashion technology is challenging those and trying to move them forward and seeing how we can develop them. So it's a question of not just understanding where we can go, but understanding the kind of background that we have on working with technology already and where that's kind of directing us and where that might influence our design process.
Thank you. I think it's now time to wrap up this session to make sure we don't steal any valuable minutes from the third roundtable.
Yes.
From my side, I would really like to thank all the participants for this very rich and fruitful discussion around the education in fashion tech. And I encourage anyone who is interested to contact the Education for Fashion Tech team if you have any questions about the resources, and also join our community platform at E4FT.eu and continue the discussion there. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you, everybody, for participating.
Thank you very much.